back. So this is the last segment of the honorees, and what we would love to do is talk a little bit about the first founding 27 STEM ecosystems. And these were 27 communities, obviously from across the United States, and they are what we are considering, and we've always considered, the 27 founding STEM ecosystems. So what we are going to do is we are going to name those STEM ecosystems, ask anyone who has ever been a part of those STEM ecosystem communities to please stand, and we are going to give a round of applause. But this one needs to be the loudest one. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was there. So Jeremy, will you start us off, please?
The Arizona Sci-Tech ecosystem. The Bay Area STEM ecosystem. Bow STEM ecosystem, Boston. Chicago STEM Pathways Cooperative. The Colorado STEM ecosystem.
East Syracuse Manoa STEM Learning Ecosystem. Evans STEM Ecosystem. Great Lakes Bay Regional STEM Initiative. Greater Austin STEM Ecosystem. Greater Cincinnati STEM Collaborative.
The Indiana STEM Ecosystem Initiative. Interdisciplinary Science and Engineering Partnership. KC STEM Alliance. LA STEM Collective. The NC STEM Ecosystem.
Neo STEM Ecosystem. NYC STEM Education Network. NYSCI STEM Ecosystem. Orange County STEM Initiative. Oregon STEM Hub Network.
The Philadelphia STEM Ecosystem. Pittsburgh Regional STEAM Ecosystem. Providence After School Alliance. San Diego Ecosystem. Tampa Bay STEM Network. Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance. And the Ventura County STEM Regional Network.
And cue the largest, loudest applause of all time. I'd like to welcome back to the stage Dr. Frederick Bertley.
Joining Dr. Bertley, please welcome Dr. Frank Creech, NC STEM Ecosystem, Dr. Donna DiCiato, ECM STEM Learning Ecosystem, Andres Henriquez, Queens 2020, Dr. Janelle Johnson, Colorado STEM Ecosystem, and Larry Plank, Tampa Bay STEM Network.
All right, folks, we're rounding third base. Yes, the World Series is about to happen. Look, can I have a quick kind of sports trivia here? Well, not trivia, but kind of applause. Who's rooting for the Toronto Blue Jays? All right. Who's rooting for the LA Dodgers? All right, well, both teams are poised to have an amazing competition. It should be an exciting way to close October. But with that, as we round third, we have our 5 last distinguished guests here representing the founding 27. And so, you know the drill. Think about a story, 3 minutes please, of a most impactful, memorable story you want to share about your experience with the STEM ecosystem. Who would like to start?
I'll start.
All right.
So not a story, but a reflection. So what if you can help a child imagine a future for themselves that they had no concept of before the interaction? And I think that's what ecosystems are so effective at making happen for communities, especially communities who are under-resourced. So think about awareness, access, and opportunity as the foundation for ecosystems. And I would guess that that's why a lot of these first 27 came together and rolled the dice on forming this community of practice, because we spent a lot of time those first few years talking about the community of practice and what that looks like, and what do we want to do, and how do we want to continue to support additional ecosystems coming in, and how do we grow as a community of practice. And I was speaking with Pavi from South Jersey earlier this evening, and she was sharing some things that they had accomplished over the past several years, and those were things that she spoke about when they first joined the ecosystem as goals, and we all have those stories. And so we see ecosystem scaling in our communities, and we see communities of practice scaling now. So that's a reflection from beginning to where we are today, and there's a very bright future ahead for our ecosystems.
That's exciting. Thank you for sharing that. Janelle.
So I am not one of the original founding folks. My state, Colorado, is. I wasn't fortunate enough to be part of the founding. You might remember Angela Baber. Give her a hand. She did so much work in Colorado and with ties and with the larger community. She used to affectionately call me the squeaky wheel because I was asking lots of questions. And when she moved on in her career, the ecosystem kind of changed hands to another organization. And it got very quiet, and nothing was happening. And I was attending the STEM Learning Ecosystems online advocacy workshops. They were outstanding, if you've been to those. And I kept asking, like, who is running Colorado? Because I can't find out. And I went, I'm a researcher. I went down the rabbit hole. I'm trying to find out. And so finally they got back to me and they said, we're not hearing anything from Colorado either. And so if you'd like to start a new application, you can do so. So I reached out to the organization that held it, kind of expecting a battle. And they said, oh, no, you can have it. They wrote us a letter of support. They offered to review our application, and we're one of the first organizations to join the 2.0 version of the STEM ecosystem. And so that was just a really lovely start to kind of rejuvenating the good work that Angela had started. And so we are really rolling along. I'm very proud to be part of, I am a co-founder of the Wild West. Woohoo! We have an ecosphere with the Western states, and we meet regularly. And I've also been really honored to support the work of other states and countries with our Kumu infrastructure, if you're using that. Ohio, I know you're here, Ohio. And so we're really so pleased to give our granito de arena to the larger community, and we are at your service.
Thank you very much, Janelle. Thank you. Donna.
Absolutely. I'm going to start with gratitude. Certainly gratitude to Jan, Julie, Ties. Gratitude, as Jan knows, to Margaret Ashita. New York would not be on the map if it had not been for Margaret Ashita and her work. Also to all the founders who have made our work possible by having sessions such as these. When someone said tonight why one of the reasons is because when you do this work, and even when you're an entire school system, you feel very alone if you're the only one that's doing it. So when you come here, you find all these other people who believe in what we believe in and are working on what we're working on, and that's so important. So thank you, Jenny. I know the exhausting hours that go into this, but it makes a difference. I also want to just highlight the fact that today, Lancaster, I want to give you a shout out. It is about partnerships Partnerships make a difference. You did an outstanding job today. We've had an industry partner at every single one of these. Jim King, he's one of our industry partners. He drives no matter where we have this in the country. And thank you, Jim. He's here tonight and has been with us all throughout the entire 10 years. But the story that I'll tell about is what Paula said about that insight when it lights up a student's life. We had been working on this, Jan had known, with regard to really, we were in search of how to become an outstanding 21st century learning community. And at every intersection, we ran into STEM. And so we were on this STEM journey when we applied to become, and had been doing the work, and then applied to become an ecosystem. So STEM was really becoming part of our DNA, our foundation. And so in it, we had the Boston Museum of Science and their work on the engineering design process, worked with TIES on the engineering design process in our pre-Ks and elementary schools, into our middle schools with transdisciplinary learning, and again, how to solve a problem, and our students really getting project-based learning, and PBL, and then into our high school with very creative types of again, courses in problem solving. So along the way, we'll have a student, I'm going to call him Jax. Jax would not probably have had the resources for college, although he had the intelligences. And he comes into, and for those of you who are newer, I know people wonder, where will the resources come from? I will tell you that the resources will find you if you're staying true to the work. We are one of New York State's first 19 early college high schools. They found us. We get $1 million plus $1.25 million every 5 years to have an early college high school for engineering science, math science, and computer science. And we have many examples like that. But along comes this young man I'm going to call Jax. He's gone through what I've just described to you of the early years and into the middle school years and project-based learning. He comes into high school. He's in our Spartan Academy, early college high school, and he does what he says after he goes through orientation. He says that he was taking a break from what we would call traditional homework, and he goes out and he hacks into a website of one of the most widely used companies in New York State in education. I won't tell you which one it was. But he instantly, upon doing it, because during the orientation, he got the names of various people, reaches out and says, I need to be able to talk tomorrow morning to the executive director of planning, development, and technology. And they make arrangements for him to meet with him, and he tells them exactly what he did. And our executive director gets in touch with the company, and the company says, after they see that it's true, how's the superintendent going to punish him? And he said, I just have to tell you, if you know our superintendent, she's going to wonder how you're going to reward him, because if this story gets, and so we'll fast forward, they fix it, we go back after a day of getting a notice that it was going to be offline, we go back to using this service again, and we give it back to the student, and he hacks it again. Second time, we're offline for 4 days, and
what was his reward then?
4 days, and they fix it for good. But fast forward, it became part of the narrative, and the reason why I tell you this story, Paula, when you said what a difference it makes. He graduated from us in 2022 and was awarded the RIT Presidential Scholarship. And the CIO of RIT contacted me to say, I want to take him on a personal tour before he begins college. It's that type of learning, I call him the ethical, that he was exploring in order to help a company in New York who now knows they had a problem, solve a problem. And it's that kind of brilliant mind that we want to develop. We have many examples of students who are doing that type of learning each and every day. I'll give you this one quick example because Stephanie and Isaac presented here, and they presented on curiosity. We have a 5th grade classroom. One of the biggest problems they said for a 5th grade classroom was that the water bottles fall over and they make noise and they're distracting. So what are they doing? They're creating their own problem solving by creating a device that holds the water bottle to the chair. I kid you not. They have done several models. They're about to do a prototype. They want to market it. They're becoming a marketing plan. But my point being that unless education really begins to change so that students have inquiry, curiosity, that it's part of the design of their learning to use what they're learning and apply it to solving problems, we will become a much better world when that happens, and it will be because of this work that we're doing. Thank you.
Ooh. Andreas, how do you follow that one?
Thank you all. Thanks, Donna. That's great. Just for the
Jax graduates this year, by the way.
just for outsiders, RIT stands for Rochester Institute of Technology,
It does.
which is one of the most competitive engineering schools in the state, if not the country. So congratulations, Donna.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thanks to Tiz and Jan and Julie Stolzer. You guys have taken me on a huge ride over the last 10 years. And without your support, I don't think I could become part of this community of practice. I was recruited to start a program at the New York Hall of Science, which is a science museum in Queens, in what's called District 24. It's in Corona. Some of you may know it because it's right by the Arthur Ashe Stadium where they play the US Open, and it's very close to LaGuardia Airport. It is one of the most densely populated districts in New York City, it's 1.1 square miles with over 60,000 residents or something like that, very densely populated. Most of the community are first generation immigrant communities, many of them from Mexico and Ecuador. And these young people really did not have very much exposure to STEM the way we knew it at the New York Hall of Science. We were a hands-on museum, and I was lucky enough to be recruited by Margaret Honey, Dr. Margaret Honey, to really begin to engage the community in that area to make sure that they understood that when they saw the museum, the community saw the museum, they didn't see it as a museum that they were welcome to. They saw it as some kind of federal building because it was one of the largest buildings in the community. But ironically, not a lot of the community was coming into the museum. And Margaret really wanted to change that. She wanted to change that not only for the New York Hall of Science, but for museums around the country as well. So that was a great idea, and I have to say, it was incredibly gratifying work to do this work. We were able to, first of all, it was called then Queens 2020. It's now called Nice Sign Neighbors, and it's still going strong. We had one of the programs that we started and that was so fundamental to this was starting something we called a parent university. And the parent university was an opportunity for us to work with parents to have them understand the value of STEM and STEM opportunities. It was an opportunity for us to not only talk to them about this work, but to also provide them with the kinds of things that they also needed, like English as a second language classes, connections to opportunities and connections to things that were in the community that they may not know about, et cetera, et cetera. It was unbelievably invaluable for them. I have to say, admittedly, this is not easy work. It's a labor of love. We were lucky enough to get some funding from the Simons Foundation as well to extend this work beyond District 24. But we were also able to, through the magic of politics and resources and visibility, start a preschool STEM school that's right on the property of the museum, which is absolutely fabulous. Anyway, all this to say that it's still going strong. We had to, one of the things that was very memorable was during the pandemic. That was one of the hardest hit communities in all of New York, where the Corona Hospital and Elmhurst Hospital was there, and there were trucks of, refrigerator trucks of people who were being trucked away. It was just awful. But we became one of the hubs there in the center to do all kinds of things like food, giving away food and delivering meals to families and making sure that people were getting tested and COVID shots, et cetera. So just when you think you need to do STEM, sometimes you just need to do things in the community that you know are just right. It was a very, very challenging time for me, and it was, and for the museum, and for all of us, I'm sure, but it was, for that community, it was really, really hit hard. But they really, we really did form a true partnership with the community, and now we are a trusted friend in the community, and they no longer see us as a federal building. They see us as an asset, so that's really great. And I just want to make sure and quote, Calvin, who I keep thinking when things get tough, Calvin Mackey says, keep pushing, and that's what we all need to be doing. We need to keep pushing, so thank you all.
All right, so before you take us home, fun fact, District 24, I know you know this, but so the audience knows this, District 24 in Queens is actually purported to be the most diverse, and yes, I'm using the word diverse, the most diverse geography, not in the country, but in the world. So the work you're doing there is critical. Thank you for that. Take us home, sir.
All right, so I get to go last. I think Jan put me on the agenda right at the end, because he also mentioned that we'd be talking in the bar about stories later. So I think, if anybody's known me in ecosystems for the last 10 years, it's where all the great stories came from, right? But also the fantastic ideas, yeah. So Calvin and I will be doing stand-up comedy there at the Marriott Marquis tonight, starting at 10 o'clock. Please join us. So I have to say, my journey in STEM, I was a research scientist before I got involved in education. And, I came to a school district, and I was able to, and fortunate enough to, earn a seat at the table at the district office of a district that was the 7th largest school district in the country in Tampa with 220,000 students. And happened to have a great superintendent, Mary Ellen Elia, who ended up becoming, superintendent of the year for the nation before she left our school district. But she had the foresight to say, we need someone at the cabinet level to oversee STEM, this thing STEM. And, I was put in the position, and she said, basically, if anybody knows Mary Ellen, she said, you got the job, congratulations. We need the best STEM program in the country. And if you don't do it, you're gone, right? So that was a high task and order, and I knew that I couldn't do it alone, and I certainly couldn't just do it within a school district. So fortunately for us, we had great partners with the Museum of Science and Industry in Tampa, the Florida Aquarium, University of South Florida, advocacy groups like the Alliance for Public Schools, and Melissa Erickson, one of our founders, is here with us tonight. Thank you so much, Melissa, for everything you did around parent engagement and Parent University. So we had the head of that organization here in Tampa. But, we all sat around the table, and everybody was doing really good things for STEM. And we said, hey, let's apply to be one of these STEM ecosystem things. And at that point, we were already working with Talia and 100K and 10. So I can't see you out there, but thank you so much. Individually, I think the conversations that you and I had, as well as everybody else at 100K and 10, and everything that was happening prior to STEM ecosystems, at least in our world in Tampa, was such a stepping stone to get to where we needed to be. So Talia, wherever you are, thank you so much. So we applied, of course, we brought everybody together, and, we kept hearing this, Gerald came, and, Ron was in Tampa, I believe, besides just the event that we hosted back in 2017 when we did this, there in Tampa Bay. And Jan, of course, and Julie, and everybody else from Ties. And we kept hearing this phrase, like, enlightened self-interest. And so I haven't heard that yet tonight, but it's what drove us to sit around the table and think about what we really should be doing as this collection of very successful organizations, a great school district, all of these entities, community organizations, a wonderful university, and other assets and community organizations that we had within the region. What should we really be doing to prevent all of the parallel play that we were doing within our community? Everybody was doing great work. We were all really excited about it. But without STEM ecosystems, we would not have really dug in and thought about how we could take the assets of all of our organizations and really build a community that is supportive of STEM, supportive of obviously the kiddos, but also awareness and building a trajectory for our economy and our workforce. And so that still rings true today. And many of the programs that we started with Mission Tampa Bay, which was a girls' underwater ROV camp that still exists 10 years later. It's the very first project we started as a collaborative with the Florida Aquarium, Mosey, the school district, and the University of South Florida. And that grew into a program called Sea Stars, which is a mentoring program for girls in STEM. So I've since moved on from Tampa. I'm still very much connected. I have one foot on one side of the state and another foot over at NASA, right? But we welcomed last weekend our girls from Sea Stars from Hillsborough, who were a part of all of the STEM network work, over to Kennedy Space Center to do a day of mentoring with them. So it really does come full circle, and even outside of the regions that we might think, that we're responsible for. So the Tampa Bay STEM Network, I know I have some Hillsborough County folks here, Peggy Barrage and Nicole Tuminella are in the audience, so congratulations on continuing on the great work and making sure that all of those collaborative situations and opportunities exist between all of the organizations in Tampa. So congratulations to all of you, and thank you so much, Jan, and everybody else at TIES for doing what you do and providing us with the opportunity to not only share success, but truly celebrate it with friends and family. Thank you.
Love that. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up to the founding 27 panelists, Frank Creech, Donna DeCiato, Andres Enriquez, Janelle Johnson, and Larry Plank. Thank you all so much for sharing your stories. Well, as I get to the close of my remarks, I want to kind of close with something that Donna started with, and that is definitely a message throughout this, which is gratitude. Any one of you could have literally been up here and shared your story. And so thank you for all of your contributions to being that connective tissue in the STEM ecosystems, because you all, over a decade, have made a lifetime of impact. Thank you very much. I'm going to call up my colleagues over here. We have Jeremy and...
Just me, Jenny's
just
hiding.
Jeremy,
Jenny's
all
hiding
right.
behind the curtain over there. How about one more very quick round of applause for everybody? You don't care about anything I have to say, so I'm only going to say if you received an award, please head over to Jenny over at that table over there to pick up your award, to take it with you. Other than that, breakfast is at 8 a.m. tomorrow. At 9 a.m., we'll be working on that future planning and future visioning. Please make sure you're there to help design the next decade of STEM ecosystems. Thanks, everyone, and good night.